This is Economics for Entrepreneurs, the podcast where we apply the principles of economics to help you start, grow, and manage your business. Here's your host, Hunter Hastings.
Hi, Hunter Hastings here. As you all know by now, because we repeat it so often, at Economics for Entrepreneurs, our aim is to build you a bridge that takes you directly from economic theory to business practices and business success. And the nature of that bridge is application. How can entrepreneurs apply the principles of economics to successful business management? As we always stress, we're talking not about the economics of GDP and money supply and total demand. Those are meaningless aggregates used to justify government intervention into economic affairs. We are talking about genuinely useful concepts about how human beings choose and how they make decisions, how they collaborate and how value is facilitated, and how individual lives are improved. One of the ways that people collaborate is that some of them form entrepreneurial firms to create value for others in an efficient and productive way, and hence contribute to social value. These concepts come from the school of economic thought that is called, unfortunately in my opinion, Austrian Economics. I think of this school of thought as entrepreneurial economics or individual economics, because Austrian economics is about individuals and their interactions and how entrepreneurial businesses can serve their customers and grow. Sometimes we start at the theory end of the bridge with our friends from the business school like Per Byland and Peter Klein. We talk about theory and then how best to put it into practice in business. Other times we talk to entrepreneurs who have started and grown businesses like Ed Pletner and Jeremy Vesta. And we try to draw inferences about the economic principles that those successes imply, a kind of reverse economic engineering. Today, we have the benefit of talking to a successful business person who actively put economics into his daily business management activities. He actively studied Austrian economics, reading all the core economics books by Mises and Rothbard and many more, and then purposefully derived from his studies a set of core management and operating principles around operations and production and pricing and sales and accounting and customer relationships and HR, including both hiring and training, and all aspects of his business. He then applied analytics to measure the effect, and he is planning to add AI and machine learning to advance his business even further on the foundations of Austrian economic principles. His name is Yousif Almoayyed, and his business, owned by Yousif's extended family, is located in Bahrain. The business sells concrete, including concrete forms and poured concrete, and other supplies and commodities to the construction industry. The business is successful, profitable, and growing, with great customer relationships. Today, we'll learn about the ways in which Austrian economics has contributed to that success. Yousif, hello.
Hello, Hunter. Hi.
Thank you for joining us at Economics for Entrepreneurs.
Thank you for having me on your podcast. It's a pleasure to be here.
At the outset, Yousif, which I pre-recorded, we gave listeners some basic details of your business, but perhaps you could fill in a little bit more detail than I've done about the business or businesses that your family and yourself operate.
So my business, the company I'm in, which is owned by my family, we produce concrete and we use raw materials that are available nearby, some in neighboring countries. Some of the raw materials are local, and we try and achieve a certain strength, which is measured in newtons. So we need to achieve the strength using the natural resources that are around us. We make concrete products, and we also import some of the building materials like limestone and limestone aggregates, which are in different sizes. Cement is one of the ingredients in concrete which we buy on the market. Some of it is manufactured locally. Some of it is ground locally. Some of it is imported in bulk. We use these resources and try and manage the quality. There is natural variation in these materials because they come from nature. They're not always the same. So you're constantly testing the mixes, optimizing them, and trying to achieve the strongest, the highest strength at the cheapest cost possible. So this is the business. I'll just tell you some of the things that go into it. So you're moving a lot of materials around, bulky, heavy materials. You're delivering, so there's an element of logistics there. Um, it's also a bit like a service. So you have to prepare the sites. You have to pump. Maybe some sites need some special preparation, which you have to do ahead of time. So these are the elements of of this business, and it's very capital intensive, and the machines they cost a lot. One ready mix mixer truck costs around $100,000. So the we use all these machines and uh, and try and uh, add value to the customer. The customers are usually contractors. They're they can also be they can also be individual clients, small cash customers. They can be large contractors. So we deal with all kinds of clients, and this is the business. Very competitive, and as you know, construction can be cyclical. There can be a lot of demand and then a sudden drop in demand, so you have to quickly adjust to the situation of the market. I'd say that's a good summary of the business.
Well, thank you for that. And so that's exactly the kind of practical business that we're hoping to help some of our listeners apply the principles of economics to. And so we're going to learn how you've done that, Yousif, and I know you've done it very successfully. And you've told me that studying and learning and absorbing Austrian economics made you a better businessman, better at what you do, which is that full range of management that you talked about. And maybe just briefly, you can tell us how you went through that learning. I think you told me you've read all of the hardest texts, The Human Action and by Mises and Man, Economy and State by Rothbard, and many, many, many more. And then you asked yourself how you could apply those principles to your business. So, is that kind of an accurate encapsulation of your method? And maybe you can expand on that for our listeners.
Okay. My degree is not in business, so I had no business training before starting. I was more of an engineer, math and science, and computer science person. So I had no exposure to economics or business school. But my family are in business, so they do talk about it. So I do hear about it a lot. When I started in this business, I started first of all as a trainee, and our other partner was being treated for cancer. My father asked me to just maybe do some training, learn how the business works. There was no formal method, or no one was going to train me. No one was going to show me how things work. I have to just ask and figure things out on my own. So it was from this position, trying to figure things out on my own, that I stumbled upon economics, and I found that looking at things from the economic lens, looking at people, putting yourself in the place of people, trying to understand their motivations, their reasons for acting, the reasons they're doing things in a certain way, what goals they're trying to achieve. So this was maybe a year into training, and I read some simple books like Irwin Schiff's How an Economy Grows and Why It Doesn't. Ron Paul recommended the law once on TV. So these I didn't know these books were connected in any way. I knew Peter Schiff from TV. I didn't know this was his father. Later, I connected all of them and found I heard of Austrian Economics from Ron Paul and from people that explained the crash of 2008. So it was there that I knew that there was a school of economics called the Austrian School. And in the beginning, I read some of the hard books. I just read Mises because the Mises Institute, is named after Mises. So I didn't know who Rothbard was. I hooked up iTunes U to my car and started listening to Mises University. And so I was listening in the car to Mises University. I was reading on my own. I downloaded all the books for free. So the Mises University, they guided me what to read, and they do mention some of the books. So when I started reading, I was very surprised and shocked at why wasn't I taught this before? Why wasn't it explained to me in this way before? So the only way I could figure things out was to look at things from an economic point of view and look at people's motivations. This is the only way I could understand people. So I just kept doing that and kept reading, and slowly it all came together and it clarified a lot of concepts which you kind of know it before, but they give you a vocabulary, a very accurate vocabulary. The I'd say the economics made me better able to analyze what's going on, understand people's motivations better. So all the other knowledge that came later was built onto this, and through that I was able to figure things out. And I felt myself a big change in myself. Just a personal thing is I felt suddenly I'm much more decisive, I'm much more sure of what to do. When I first started, because I was from an engineering background, I'd be a bit, let's say, like obsessed with numbers. So this obsession with numbers and measuring and gathering data and being empirical, I dropped it, and I could just think more intuitively and not worry about being exact in terms of numbers, because these aren't, like, value isn't a measurable thing, so you don't have to be exact numerically with things. So this really clarified my thought and just helped me solve problems.
Let's start there with value, Yousif. I like your phrase about being decisive and confident. So if we can communicate some of that to our listeners, that will be a great benefit. So we've been talking about value creation at Economics for Entrepreneurs, that values in the mind of the customer, that it's an experience on their part, that the entrepreneur's job is to understand customer motivations and design offerings from the customer's point of view. So tell us what you took away from your readings in economics about value and about human motivations.
The idea that value is subjective is something you kind of know, but a lot of people maybe confuse the vocabulary a bit. They may talk about valuation, or accounting can maybe make you have another understanding of value, but you kind of know that value isn't money. You know that money has value, and and the whole of economics is based on value being subjective. So the law of marginal utility, you can use that law to understand motivation, for example. So if you want to, uh, let's say, motivate a child, you could give them 100 candies, or you could give them one spread out. it may have more value than suddenly getting a bunch of candy, let's say. Um, when you motivate uh, people, you have to also understand what their values are. If you put an incentive that doesn't have any value to them, how is that incentive going to influence their behavior? So this made me think more deeply about value, and the way that praxeology works is that you deduce people's people's values from their actions. And because value is subjective, to your employees, anything you do can have value. So, for example, if you have a good work environment, that provides value that isn't monetary. You can't cash it, but that's something valuable to an employee. If you're nice to your employees, if they like you, that can be valuable. If parking is convenient, that's something valuable. If you give someone recognition, that can be valuable. Some people, some companies, they even give off titles, so they have an inflation in titles. So
Right, title
they
inflation.
will come up with these funny titles, and or strange or elaborate titles that uh, can make someone feel a sense of importance, even what car they get. So all these things provide value to the employee.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is
What about your customers, Yousif? Have you been able to apply that thinking to your customers?
okay. Yeah. Then so this is internally I'm talking. The next thing
Hmm.
is your customers. You need to know. So when you look at value, when you pay attention to value, it's like when you play tennis, they say keep your eye on the ball, right? So value is something to focus on. You should know why your product has value. Why is it valuable to customers? There are many reasons. So if you want me to go into my specific case, for example, there are factors like the quality of your service. People may like you or not like you. That's another form of value. There may be goodwill in the market. Quality of the product you provide. Are you timely? Are you late? Do you deliver? Are you reliable in deliveries? Um, so these are all things that can influence that can influence the perception of the value in your customers' minds.
Yeah, and how can you find out which of those are perceived as higher value than others? I think Rothbard talks about the hierarchy of values. Can you figure out if some of those are more important to some of your customers than to others? Can you differentiate that way?
Well, each one affects a different part. So if you're late to a customer, his workers are waiting and you're wasting his
Hmm.
man hours. That hits the customer in a different place than if your quality isn't good and you have a failure, then they have to remove it. That's even worse. If you're efficient, your customer becomes efficient too. So it's a B2B business. We don't sell the final product that the customer consumes. The contractor can save money and save time, and he can rest assured that the quality is good of your product. So that if you have a good margin of safety, they won't be stressed. Sometimes some people barely reach the required strength.
So we've talked about value, Yousif, and the principle that subjective value experience lies with the customer. And that leads Austrian economists to a very distinctive point of view about price, that it's determined by the customer. The producer can't set the price by taking their costs and adding a markup. They've got to let the customer set the price. So, what did your studies and your experience tell you about market prices, and what's your practical experience of pricing?
Um, the way the way I look at prices is that the price the price of something um, is a kind of average of what all the actors think it should be. So some people think it should be higher, some people think it should be lower, some people expect it to drop. So all these actors are have different opinions, but this price, the price settled on this number. So um, and value obviously influences prices, but prices tell you a lot about what's going on. So, okay, I understand that there's supply and demand influences price, supply and demand of the good, but I didn't realize that also supply and demand of money also influences the price. So you look
Mm-hmm.
at the supply and demand of the good and the supply and demand of money, and you have to decide which one or more of these four factors influence the price, but exactly which one of these factors, for example, in relation to the others, like for example, can you say 50% of the influence was due to this, the demand increasing? You can't be 100% sure that it's due to that, but what you can do is you can look at these things and try and understand your market. So you have an economic theory that explains why prices rise and fall, but then you need to take that and understand your specific market
Mm-hmm.
and the actors in your market, exactly what are they doing that made the price move in such a way that you observe. So the prices can tell you, if the news is true, you can take a look at prices. So prices don't lie. They can lie for a short time, but you, the prices a lot of the times contradict the news, and they can tell you that some news is. They can tell you which news is true and which news is fake news. Sorry,
Fake news,
fake
right?
fake news. So you can immediately tell that, okay, something is just somebody put that out there, but people don't really believe it, because if they really believed it, the prices would would move in a different direction.
Yep.
Prices tell me a lot about what's going on and about people's expectations. I'll tell you some interesting stories. A lot of people don't accept the market price, and they think, okay, I want the price to be in a certain level. For example, someone might. I've seen examples in the country, like their building is maybe a third empty. They don't want to bring the price of their rent down. They leave it empty because they believe the rent should be higher.
Mm-hmm.
So some people, they buy assets at the wrong price, but then when they want to sell the assets, they think it should be sold for the same price that they bought it for. If someone made a mistake, he should just admit he made the mistake and then just sell it for whatever he can get, instead of saying, I made this mistake. There must be some other guy that will make the same mistake, and I'll sell it to him.
Right.
So, um, so a lot of people don't accept the market price, and a lot of maybe employees also don't accept the market price. So they may want a certain wage, they don't get it, and they may not decide to stay on. They may not work. They may decide to voluntarily stay unemployed. But what young workers need to do is they need to not think about their wage, that this is a price of your this is a price of your time, or that represents, or that amount is your value, This isn't a good way to think. You should think of the long term value that you're going to gain by working in such a job.
Yeah. In fact, what we urge is that they think about how to make themselves more valuable, which can be
Exactly.
skills and training and all the things you talked about before, being on time and being a great employee.
Sure. But I'll say so prices they determine your costs.
Can you talk about that exactly? The Austrians say the price is determined in the market by the customer, and therefore you construct your factors of production and your production stream based on that market price, and you make that adjustment. Is that practical? Do you actually do that?
That does sound correct, but you have some control over prices. If you can predict how much you're going to buy, you can negotiate. You can find more suppliers. You can also speculate on certain goods which you think will be in demand. You could purchase more of them. So there are things that you can do to reduce your costs, but the final price,
Hmm.
that you have to meet that market price, and you have to find ways of keeping your costs below that. Um, but an interesting thing about prices is that because prices determine your cost structures, um, if if prices change, then your costs change. So your accounts suddenly look different. Even your past achievements that you made in the past, now, because the price that you had in the past is now frozen. You shouldn't take that for granted, because in the future, if the price changes, you can't repeat that same arrangement you had in the past. You need to look at it. So not only do prices um, change the way your accounts look in the past, but of course in the present and the future too. So I thought it only affected the present and the future, but later I realized that it also affects the past, because whatever you arranged at that time may not work again. You may not be able to repeat what you did before under new conditions and new market conditions.
Right. Yeah. In fact, I think Mises said that all prices and all information is in the past. It's history, and that's the way that you have to treat it. So isn't that economic? Isn't that economic calculation that we're talking about?
Yeah, what I like about Austrian economics is that they start in a very simple way, and they go step by step, and from some form of barter in the textbook, which is explained, what they call a Crusoe economy, and then
Hmm.
they slowly introduce money. What you see in many economics courses, which I just happen to browse online, they suddenly jump into supply and demand and prices, scarcity. They don't slowly build up that structure. So they take a lot of things for granted, and don't understand uh, where they came from, and um, how would things have been arranged before you had those things, or certain assumptions that are built into, um, let's say, costs or accounting. Um, Let me just say something. Accounting, some accountants have this problem. They think they're measuring things, and they need to understand they're not really measuring things. Some of these numbers are aggregated figures. Um, they may represent a kind of average over a span of time, which you arbitrarily decided that these are the periods in which you're taking snapshots, which is the quarterly or monthly, quarterly. Um, uh, so the accounting is trying to take something that is inherently dynamic and simplifying it and putting it into numbers for for I believe for the purpose of stewardship over capital.
Mm-hmm.
So the people that made some of these systems, they were just appointing managers and kind of looking into the business and seeing how they're doing periodically. Uh, they need a simplified way to represent what's going on. For a person running a business, understanding what's underneath that accounting information is really important, and understanding economics allows you to dive into the the phenomena that's going on underneath
Underneath the
underneath
numbers,
the
yeah.
numbers. So you also, because in I like how in Austrian economics you bring in assumptions, but you're aware that you brought in a certain assumption. So the way that they focus on methodology and how they bring in certain assumptions while they're aware of them. In accounting, there are a lot of um, assumptions there, and you need to um, be aware of those assumptions. So the way accounting deals with many things like inflation, or if the prices of assets fluctuate, how do the
Mm-hmm.
accountants deal with that? In depreciation, they use many people use the straight line method, um, and of course depreciation is deduced from it's deducted. Sorry, it's not. It's deducted from income tax. So there is a bit of a motivation to exaggerate the amount that's depreciating. So you need to
Right.
look at the ends of the people, the ends of the people that designed these accounting systems. What were they trying to do? Why did they uh, put these things in place? And what are they there for? Do they apply like they apply in some other country? Do they apply over here? Are they good for here? Um, like I once asked my accountant, why do people use EBITDA? Do you use that?
Yeah,
Okay,
EBITDA,
EBITDA.
earnings before
Okay.
income tax and deduction
So
and
what
appreciation.
he told me, he says, look, EBITDA is a scheme invented by investment bankers to make their investments look better.
Right.
So
Yeah. And it's also true that there can be very different accounting conventions for different styles of management. So the whole lean process that became very popular looks at accounting flows as opposed to putting cost on things like inventory and parts and things like that, and tries to account across a flow when the ingredient comes in to when the finished product goes out, and it gets a very different result than if you were looking at accounting on parts and inventory. So I hear what you say, that accounting, you got to know what the assumptions are.
one thing Austrian economics brings into the subject is time.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people also don't think of time in some of their accounts, or in some of their costing. People look at things and don't see certain things that to me look obvious, and I think they look obvious because I just knew economics.
Yeah. One of the issues in accounting in Austrian economics, for me anyway, is that all costs are opportunity costs. We had a discussion with Per Byland about that some time ago.
Right.
And accounting has a hard time dealing with the idea of opportunity cost. The real cost of anything is what you give up in order to make that choice. So,
Right.
have you found a way to deal with opportunity cost?
Well, see, in when you learn Austrian economics, you learn all these categories, and these categories help you analyze what's going on. So understanding what opportunity cost is, understanding that it's ultimately a subjective thing. You may be able to know um, if you would have done something else, what the way things would have turned out, in maybe numerically or in a simple way, but you can't really know that if you pursued some opportunity, it would have led to something that might have led to something. You can't really trace the full course of the event.
Right. It's counterfactual, as they say.
What would have happened if it fully manifested? You could maybe look a few steps what would have happened, but you can never really know um, what happened. Only the decision maker knows the information he had at the time, and the reasons behind why he made the decision.
Another part that of Austrian economics that we've talked about is we've been calling it resources, the resources and capabilities that the producer has, and I think you talk about that in terms of factors of production. What are the all the different steps you can take to produce a product, all the ingredients and components and resources that you can assemble? Um, Within this concept of economic calculation, do you think Austrian economics helps you with that assembly of the factors of production?
Um, well, it definitely helps you think about factors of production. So if you're thinking of land, you can see, okay, their land, each land is different. Why is it different? Maybe it's located different at a different place, has different properties, it has different things nearby or underneath it. So you look at land, and you try and think, okay, what's the advantage of this land over that land? And so you look at the thing, how it is, and you try and see all the different types of land, for example, that are out there. And the other thing is labor. So labor, you have a difference between people, and how do you use this difference? I mean, there's division of labor and specialization that can increase people's productivity, and then there's capital. Also, capital, you need to understand what is capital, and I think the best definition, I read it in Hayek's book, Pure Theory of Capital. He called them the non-permanent goods that temporarily increase or production above what it otherwise would have been without it. So right there, it says that the goods are temporary, the goods are non-permanent, and their effect is temporary, which explains why you depreciate the assets in accounting. But obviously, that depreciation method in accounting doesn't correspond to how it really depreciates.
Yeah, it doesn't capture real life.
You need to capture things like downtime, um, cost of maintenance, yeah, and productivity, how much product it's pushing out, and based on the market prices, you can then decide whether this equipment is
Hmm.
worth running, or should you sell it. If a change in market price would also change when you should sell your equipment. I mean, timing your capital investments is an important part of my business. If I do it right,
Right.
it can give me a sustained advantage. Thinking in terms of land, labor, and capital goods. So, just thinking in these terms, how do you combine these things to get the product out? What are the capital goods? Uh, what capital goods depend on each other? Um, some people think, oh, machines are going to replace people, but machines are complementary to people. Robots are complementary to people. They A person can produce more with a robot than without a robot. Nobody's calling for supermarkets to cancel barcode scanners
Right.
so that we employ more people. The person with the barcode scan can now people don't want even the person to scan the barcode. They have they don't have it where I live, but I saw in the U.S. and many places they have barcode scanner without a person.
Right. They've offered what they call self-checkout, and the consumers decided they don't like it. They'd rather have the value of somebody to help them do that.
Yeah. I didn't know the results are out on that.
Well, it hasn't caught on. Let's say
Okay. Okay.
there's one aisle in the supermarket for self-checkout and 15 aisles for assisted checkout. So, but some countries, when I was in Switzerland recently, it's pretty common that everything is self-checkout. Um, so at the beginning, Yousif, you said something I think that would inspire people, which is that all of the study of Austrian economics has made you more decisive and confident in decision making. And you also said that a lot of that is not based on data and analytics. It's based on more qualitative understanding and observing what's going on around you in the marketplace. Can you tell us a little bit more about that, about decisiveness and confidence?
Okay. Sometimes uh, you make a decision, you don't have all the information. You look at indicators. So, for example, Hayek talks about knowledge being distributed. So I do believe in in talking to people, like salesmen, listening to rumors. In London, I like talking to black cab drivers.
They have a lot of distributed information.
They they have a lot of information. So if you ever go to London, be sure to talk with
Yeah.
the cab driver over there. So this we can get indications of what's going on, and um, if they all seem to be pointing in a certain direction, um, the facts on the ground seem to be pointing in a certain direction. You can reach a conclusion. So what I'm telling you about this confidence, it comes from being right. So if so many times you were right, you predicted things correctly, and things turned out exactly how you thought, so you then build your confidence builds, and you can call things before you have the rest of the information. So you meet people. You can't know a person fully just by meeting him once. You need to interact a few times, but you form a judgment. It's good to test yourself, form a judgment, but don't hold on to it too much. If I'm pleasantly surprised later by someone, I'll review my judgment. If I'm surprised by something, I won't be as decisive if there is contradictory information. But it's the economic theory that makes this information make sense. So just telling me a rumor here or there isn't gonna benefit me unless I fit it and build a picture of what these things
Yeah.
indicate.
So you always go back to theory as the basis.
And I do think maybe a few things help me out. Like I live on an island, so if things come into the island, you can see things coming in. You can look at the ports. You can you could I think I have an easier time narrowing down what's going
Hmm.
on the island I live on. It's just the fact of being an island and a small place, and you can figure things out more easily.
Yeah.
You can eliminate things and narrow down. So it's this process of narrowing down what's really going on or what's causing something that I became better at after learning Austrian Economics.
Yeah. But any small business owner presumably could do that in their own geography if they're dealing with local customers.
Right, right. I mean, over here, my biggest problem is getting paid on time.
Hmm.
That is just the biggest risk, and that could destroy maybe a small business if he
Right.
gives out a lot of credit, and you don't have a very strong legal protection, like you don't have immediate how to say, you have fast judgments and immediate execution of the judgment.
Hmm.
That's why over here people ask for checks. If a check bounces, you go to jail if your check bounces.
Oh, wow.
But I think it's relaxed a bit, which I don't know if it's good or bad, because now you don't have the safety of having a check. I don't know. So that was um, that was the way that you dealt with things. Okay, write me a check, and now I feel safe. I'll give you what you want. Yeah.
I'm going to turn the telescope around now, Yousif, and say you've learned so much from Austrian economics. You've thought through it really carefully. You've applied a lot of principles in your business, and you've shared that with us. What is missing? What, as a businessman, when you look at what's available to you in economic theory, and you wish, boy, I wish I could get some more help in this area, or here's a place where we need to shed more light. Do you have any wish list like that?
I'll tell you, I think, okay, the theory seems to be fine. I'm not adding anything to theory. The application, I'd like to listen to more people that
Mm-hmm.
benefited from knowing Austrian economics, and your podcast would certainly talk to these people, and I'd like to listen to others and
Mm-hmm.
how they applied some of these insights into their business, and learn from them. So so theory seems okay. The thing that I faced is, as soon as I kept reading, very soon you realize, okay, you're completely on your own. There's no one to show you how to do it. Definitely, for example, visits to the Mises Institute, conferences, RGS, Mises U. I thought these events. I mean, I walked away from them. I went away knowing a lot more and understanding the material much better, because at least I can talk to others that read the same books, instead of just me repeating stuff to myself, or thinking about how can I catch my own mistakes. I want to see how good I am. Am I wrong in thinking this? One person I talked to at RGS was David Gordon,
That's Rothbard graduate seminar, right?
Rothbard
Yousif?
graduate
Yeah.
seminar, right? So one person I talked to is David Gordon. So I asked David Gordon, so if all of these things you're teaching us are true, shouldn't I have a higher chance of success at work? He says, yeah, I mean, if all of these things are true, you should have a higher chance of success. So this is I just pursued that, and
Yeah.
continued refining my knowledge. And Professor Klein, Peter Klein, recommended many books on costing, um, many papers. There was a professor, I think his name is Thomas Taylor. He has a dissertation called um Accounting in Light of Austrian Economics, in which he highlights things related to accounting theory, and he quoted a lot on in human action in that book. So it clarified, it kind of joined my economics to accounting, and my understanding of costing and accounting was connected with my economics. So I every time I learn a new subject, I try to tie it in with my economics.
Good.
And
Good. What we're going to try and do on economics for entrepreneurs, Yousif, is have those professors come and tell us about theory, like Dr. Klein and Dr. Byland, and we'll have others, and then talk to entrepreneurs like yourself. And we're going to try and alternate that week by week, and hopefully we'll get to where you would like to be, which is we'll see how we can apply